Hey guys, what's up? Last time I chatted with Ryan Canestro about setting up his Reaper session. You guys seem to really enjoy the video, so I'm back with him again a month or so later, and he's already mixing 2 different films in 5.1. So we're gonna get some insight into what's going on with that, what's involved, how do you set that up, and can Reaper handle it?
Yeah, I thought I'd go from the basics to completely overcomplicating it immediately.
Yeah, so I've never done a 5.1 mix, never really thought about it. I think it's pretty cool that you could dive in and get pretty advanced with it that quickly.
And I'm sure there's going to be a whole slew of comments immediately saying, here's a better way to do it. And I'm all for it. Just let us know. But here's how I did it. All right. So I took the Pro Tools session that I had for the original editing and mixing when I was still doing that kind of thing in Pro Tools. I printed out stems. And I printed out stems of almost everything except for things that were just like a reverb that was on a certain character. So I put those back in and popped those in. So that would be the main character Ben here, and then his reverb for the giant cage that he's stuck in, and then God, who seems to be yelling at him most of the movie, and God's reverb. And then different elements. So the found footage, dialogue, ADR, and voiceover. Every time the TV turns on and off, that TV effect, so whatever found footage is being played back, the reverb for that, to also put that in the prison cell where they're at, and then different effects, glass breaking, all the different effects on effects 1 and 2. I think the glass I added that here in Reaper just because this is one of the few effects where it just happens in the back left channel. So it was one of those things where I needed that there.
Yeah.
And then more reverbs and effects and stuff, and then the score and whatever music was in there. And then Skype in and Ryan, that's just so you guys can hear me now and I can hear John.
So basically the mix, a lot of the balances were done already in the Pro Tools session. Is that correct?
So it was pretty much 95% done in Pro Tools, but it was such a large session. There was stuff everywhere. So Pro Tools was definitely choking on it. I couldn't get it to bounce for more than 5 minutes before it collapsed. And that's full settings on everything. So I had to print down stems in like 3 passes. So yeah,
that's
it
annoying,
definitely wasn't
right?
happy.
Yeah.
Completely. And then I also needed a surround mix, which in Pro Tools I started trying to do it and almost gave up immediately. It was so convoluted in how the routing would have to be, how everything would have to be. So not knowing anything about how this works, and John, who I lean on whenever I have a little problem, and I'm sure he's annoyed by now, but he got me into this, so it's his mess. He just said, try the ReaSurround. So that's what I did. I popped it in there, and you can get into this plugin, and it's pretty easy to use. It's pretty straightforward. One thing that was kind of confusing was the gain versus the LFE. That gives you the controls here that send to either the low frequency or overall gain. So that one, I don't know why that toggles like that. That seemed kind of confusing.
It would be nice to have all those settings there.
Yeah, I mean, you could just remove this and then put 2 more sliders there.
It takes up the same space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I did was for almost all of the dialogue, it gets sent right down the middle. So you'll see front, and then I put a little bit left and right. So it's not completely dependent on the front channel, but you get a little bit in the sides for support. And they're right down the middle. So that's
like -6 or so?
Somewhere in there. Let's see what it doesn't really say. So that would be nice to also have some little metering in there. But again, I'm not complaining. So then I have the input channels and then the output channels. So 2 in, 6 out. So then I went through and each one. So like the for the reverbs, I have them in the left and right, nothing in the front, not sending anything to the lows, and then a good chunk in the back too. So the main character is speaking, that's coming out the middle, a little bit the sides, and then the reverb is coming only sides and back, and less towards the back. So it still has that front feel. So same for the God character, which is a speaker in the room yelling at the guy.
Okay.
And then for like found footage, that one I have coming out of the center, a little bit out of the sides, just like the dialogue. What's kind of cool is this movie, it's kind of an odd format where it goes between this guy in a cage having this whole conversation with a speaker, and then found footage cutting back and forth from his life and things going on around him, news footage, things like that. So he's watching this on a TV in the room. So when it goes to the outside world, you get kind of a one-sided thing, and it goes back to the cage. It gets really dimensional, where you hear all the reverb in the cage, and then when stuff starts happening in the outside world that involves him, then it gets big again all around all sides. So this movie depended very heavily on sound. I spent a lot of time doing all the design, and the director had very specific ideas in mind. So it was a huge undertaking. I created all the original sounds, layered tons of sound effects, did the location audio on set. So I've seen this movie 1,000 times, including being filmed. But the sound ended up really cool on this.
Cool.
The only thing that kind of sucks is I don't know how to check this on a home system now. So I do know I can take this mix, pop it into Audacity, and export an AC3, and then burn that to a DVD. Somehow syncing that to the visuals of the movie. Not quite sure how to do that because I'm not totally familiar with what a lot of the video editing software will do, but maybe I can run that all together, burn a DVD, and then pop it in a system somewhere.
Yeah, that's something that I've never done, and I only did like 5 minutes of Googling to help you out with the format, but I don't know. Let the DVD guys figure that out, right?
I would like to hear it like on a proper subwoofer. So
Yeah.
All that being said, so we have the plug-in here, and what I'm doing is I'm sending out all these channels. So left, right, center, low, back, left, back, right. So what I did was I've only got 2 pairs of monitors. So I used my main 2 where they were. I took another monitor. I have a V4 KRK. Pop that in the middle as my center channel. And then I didn't have any rear channels. So what I did was I pulled out my PA system and put 2 of those in the back. I've got a smaller set of speakers. So I use those as the rears. And then I used one of the big PA speakers for the sub. And I sent each its own discrete channel so I can hear all of them. Then I went through my studio and I took my noise meter and calibrated all of them. So all of the speakers were sending out the same amount of pink noise when I went around and measured each one. The sub was tough because I wasn't really sure. It's putting out so much low energy and I'm rolling off all the highs. But I think I kind of overestimated that it was too loud, so I brought it down even more because the last thing you want is your bass speaker exploding in the theater, ruining the whole movie.
Yeah.
So I kind of went with caution and dropped that like an additional 6 dB after it kind of checked out right on the meter.
I'm sure that this is fairly common for people trying to do surround mixes in small rooms, home studios and stuff. You won't know until you get to a theater. Really.
Yeah, and until you know your system versus how it plays out in the theater, and you've done that, and you've mixed it, you're confident in it, went to the theater, and it played out just how you thought, then you know where you're at. I have no idea where I'm at, so we're gonna find out real quick. I'm sure after that first festival, they're gonna be like, okay, I like where the sound guy was going with this, but it sounds like garbage.
So what about bringing the video in, and did you set your project to frames and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, exactly. This one, it has a specific start time. It's usually the movie always starts exactly at 1 hour. So you have, you go into the 58 minutes, that's where usually it starts. So I had to set up the project to start at something that's like 58 something or other, 59, 4809. That's where it starts for some reason.
Okay.
So, and then the video I have has timecode embedded, which I highly recommend if you're going to do this, have them embed the timecode into the video. It'll save your ass a lot. So pop that in, make sure it all lined up, make sure the frame rate's correct. In this case, it's 23,976 frames per second. And then I just clicked through the movie at several different points and made sure that the timecode on the video lined up with the timecode in my timeline, and it did.
Okay.
So, and this is one I've done several times. Several versions of the movie have been sent to me. So I've done this in Pro Tools many times, And this one hasn't slipped. When I switched over to Reaper, no problems, popped it in, it all worked. I kind of expected it to. It was kind of hard to get Reaper to jump to exactly the number I wanted, even though I knew the number. When I typed it in, it didn't quite show up as I typed it for some reason. It was weird. It was fighting me. So a couple trial and error and just kind of outsmarted it after about 5 tries. But I think I had to type in the wrong number, and then I calculated how far off it was each time to get the right number.
Okay, that's weird.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going on there. Maybe I'll have more luck next time.
Yeah. There are some improvements to video in version 5, but I'm not sure if that is something that has been addressed. I don't really know.
And what version am I on?
You're on 4.78, it says right at the top.
4.78. Okay.
So did you do anything with the automation or anything in the that matrix of speakers there in the ReaSurround?
Yeah, on these guys right here.
Yeah.
With playing with these. I did a little bit. You can kind of, get the speakers to come and go and all that. This one was pretty meat and potatoes. So I didn't really want to mess with it too much. I wanted to get a good feel, and I wanted to just get it done. I didn't want to experiment too much because I've already worked on this movie past what I've agreed to do for time versus money, and more money's not coming.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make this. It was a safe mix.
Okay.
And in the future, I'd like to experiment with it more, especially if I'm on the clock and being paid to experiment with it more. It was definitely interesting, and the part that I was kind of having trouble with once I got everything kind of in the space I wanted, I didn't know how to have the sub be only the bass frequencies that it should be, because this part doesn't do it. It just sends everything to the LFE. Right. It doesn't have a crossover built into it. So when I got over to the end here, this is where it starts getting interesting. Here, I'll just bring all these up. So I had all these RIA EQ, and you can see I have all the routing here. So this one's going from input 5.6 to output 5.6.
All right, so that's only processing your rears.
My rears. So I took all the bass out of the rears.
Okay.
And then on this one, it's only going from channel 4 to channel 4, which is the LFE. Yep. So you can see that I'm only sending it the lows.
Right. Do you think that's necessary if you're using a dedicated subwoofer?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, you have to just give it what it wants. You never know what the theater is going to have. Is the theater going to be looking for a full range, or is it going to be looking for just that frequency? I would assume that they would only want that frequency.
I think this is safer.
Yeah, because this way, if they have a crossover or they don't have a crossover, it's crossed over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why would they ever need the full resolution? It's just more garbage they have to filter. And then over here on this one, this is channels 1 and 2. So I rolled off some lows for the sides. And then this one is probably just the center channel, which it is. And I just rolled off a little bit of the lows.
Cool. How are you liking that ReEQ?
I like it. I like all the little squiggly lines when I'm talking right now. I think it's pretty cute.
Yeah.
And sounds good.
Yeah, it's a great EQ.
Easy to use. And there's only a few EQs I've seen that do this, so you can actually see where some of your problems are.
Yeah.
And then I had to do the same exact thing when it came time to do the compressor at the end.
Okay.
I had to compress them all differently based on what they were, because most plugins are 2-channel plugins. So I had to use a bunch of them to do all the different channels.
There's probably one of the Waves plugins that is set up like one plugin does 6 channels, but as far as I know, this is like the simplest way to set it up. You just assign the inputs and outputs on a 6-channel master, then that's all you need to do, really.
Yep. So once I set up this, especially this RIA EQ, which one? That one. Then while I'm listening, sending out to that PA speaker that I set behind me and pointing away to get that subwoofer feel. I just got the lows in that thing. and all it was doing was rumbling when the storm came up or things like that,
Cool.
gunshots or whatever. And it really sounded good. The movie never sounded so huge. And I think that was the whole point.
Cool. I got a tip if you would like it, just for organizing your
Yes.
master fader. If you click on the master effects button on the master fader, brings up the effects chain.
Green button. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So you can right click on any of those where it says VST ReEQ. You can right click there and you can actually rename these.
Okay.
So rename effects instance down there, kind of towards the bottom. And, name that like, I'm not sure which channel that is.
That would have been the rears.
Yeah. So you just label that like EQ rear or something like that.
Rear EQ.
And if you have this in a template or save it as an effects chain, it's a lot easier to find the one you're looking for right away.
Yeah. That's actually really cool. Yeah, and these are the kind of things that I love about Reaper. I keep finding them. And then it makes things so much easier. Yeah, that will make things a lot easier.
All the individual tracks are going right to the master, but it's ReaSurround that's actually doing the routing to the specific channels that you want.
Yes.
The other way of doing it would be to mute the master send and then use a regular send to the master, I guess. And that would have your channel routing.
Yeah, if you had a 6-way send.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it would just be sending channels 1 and 2 from that track to input 5 or whatever. But but this allows you to mix right in the plugin. You see all your channels at once.
Yeah, and when you play with some of these little faders here, I mean, they definitely will move things around in space, which is pretty cool. Like you can get further away, closer in. You can do all of those dimensional things.
Yeah, you can just bump it up 50% at the crest of an explosion or something like that. All those kind of things that would take you days just doing tiny automation moves.
Oh yeah, and like you could just automate this one thing if like you have a scene where like maybe a storm's pulling out or something's leaving. You can make it. You can do that kind of stuff. Like you're getting further and further away from the event, just doing the Y depth.
What video format are you using here for your reference?
I'm pretty sure it's an H.264.
You can right click on the item and go to source properties. So 1080p 23.98 and it's using QuickTime decoder. It's not actually showing like format of that. Probably H.264.
I think it is.
Okay, cool. How long is this film?
A little over 90 minutes, I think. So, 121.
It's a little hard to tell at this zoom like that it's an hour long because it almost looks like it's like a few minutes long if you're used to like looking at music.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a lot going on here. and
no problems playing it back in Reaper, right?
No, especially once I got down to stems. There is the Pro Tools session that I bounced all this stuff from. You can see there's a few channels going on, and you can see here where it's all dimmed out. That's after I'd bounced this chunk, I had made it inactive. Oh, which reminds me, a question. Is there something in here instead of deleting tracks to make them inactive and hide them? And if I did, where would I find them again? Because I did like that feature in Pro Tools of making tracks inactive, and sometimes I'd come back to reference them.
Yeah, so you're looking for the track manager. And muted tracks, unless there's automation on them, they don't take any CPU.
Cool.
So
okay, so it's basically if I mute them, then we're good, and that just takes all the plugins out of the mix too. Really not looking for bandwidth as much as I am to get them out of my view.
Yeah. Yeah. So Track Manager has separate show and hide buttons for the TCP and the MCP.
And that would be where?
I believe that's View menu.
Track Manager.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So you see there's the little dots under TCP. You can just click and drag down.
What do you mean?
Click where one of the dots is.
Mm-hmm.
And then drag down.
Oh, it's gone.
Yeah. But you can just click and drag and you do like, all those tracks at once.
Oh, yeah. So they would just kind of swipe.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Swipe is a better way of saying it. Yeah.
Because I thought you wanted me to put that dot somewhere.
Right. And same for the mixer control panel. So like I use this most with virtual drums where I just want the MIDI track in the range view, but I want all the individual audio outputs from that in the mixer instead of both. And that makes things a lot less cluttered. There's ways of kind of like recalling sets of tracks. So like if you have the word drum in the title, you can kind of filter that list and show
cool.
only those things.
Yeah, that's even better answer than I was expecting.
Yeah. And if you have like hundreds of tracks there, you can type in the name of it and or part of the name of it, and it'll filter that list. Just type in dialogue right there. Yeah. So you can access that plugin. It doesn't let you it doesn't let you delete the plugins there, but you can freeze that track from there on the bottom right.
Yeah, what's freeze mean?
Freeze means it renders a pre-fader stem, turns the effects off and basically takes them out. But you can unfreeze a track and get all those plugin settings. All the plugins in the chain are back and all that kind of stuff. So
that is useful.
Yeah, so if you're running out of CPU or there's basically if you want to create a 32-bit floating point stem of that track and get 0 CPU back out of it or CPU load at the other side of that, you can do that and you can undo it. Once it's frozen, you can still, like the track isn't locked, you can still do volume, panning, add more effects and stuff like that. There's a few things you can't do, like you shouldn't edit the audio that's there because you might mess up getting it back. You might mess up your undo point for that track sort of thing. You could actually freeze up to a certain plugin in the chain as well. So it doesn't have to do the whole chain either.
Well, hopefully I won't have to get into any of that. I'm usually pretty good. I think I put a lot of RAM into this machine and then upgraded the processor so that way I don't have to, if you saw the previous video, one of the main reasons I'm not going to Pro Tools, I don't want to upgrade everything I have.
You don't have to replace everything. New computer, new interface.
I went from two cores to 2 quad cores, and that cost me $40.
It's amazing.
So I doubled the processor speed in this Mac Pro. And then I found another 8 gig of memory for like $150. And now I have 14 gigabytes of RAM and 2.66 quad core Intel Xeons.
Yeah.
And a solid state drive.
Is that maxed out for your case now?
RAM?
Processor and RAM.
There's actually like a 2.8, I think, like a faster.
Yeah.
So I could have gotten that, and that was like $130. So I'm like, I'll get double what I got.
There's not like a 3 point something for that.
I don't think so. I think that might be kind of where this one maxes out, but this should give me another couple years out of this one machine.
Yeah.
And
14 gigs.
This is a Mac Pro.
14 gigs of RAM is a lot. It is slower RAM. It is the 667.
It is.
But
I'm not doing video much.
You never know. You weren't doing much post-production.
Surround mixing. Yeah.
A little while ago.
Yeah, the post eats it up.
Yeah.
Because you're not working on a 3.5 minute song. You're working on like hundreds of elements.
Yeah.
In an hour and a half long chunk. Oh, the sweet details.
Yeah, and when you're working with ProRes video files, things are a little different as well.
All right, so after our sharp detour.
So how many tracks is that in that Pro Tools session?
I think it was 50 something originally, and there's a couple here that are not shown or muted, or I had combined a few tracks to begin with. So there might have been upwards of 100 to begin with. And then I did my best to combine as much as I could.
Did you do a lot of audio suite printing of effects to new files for the sound design?
I did. There would be a couple sound effects here, a couple little pieces there, and then I would go through and combine those all into one waveform.
All right. So
the
that's
computer wasn't.
and that's why there's not a lot of plugins. Yeah.
I did it more for combining the sound elements, and I didn't need to do a whole lot of plugins. And then I would also run some plugins into buses and have them all processed. But yeah, I'm usually not a plugin heavy guy. I try to get as much as I can in the field, or I will process sound effects separately or in real time and then print those.
Yeah.
When you have 1,000 sound effects in one movie, you don't want to have automation for each one. And if one gets moved off of its track, then it doesn't work anymore. There's so many variables, especially in this kind of environment. I like to commit to what works and move on.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. The picture is always going to be changing up until the day it's at the theater. So
Well, the day it lands on my desk, it's supposed to be logged.
I know, but it never is.
And that's about 50-50. And they never want to hear that I need more money since you've unlocked it and screwed up everything I've done.
We probably shouldn't get off on a tangent on that.
But a real quick one, I had a film that was done, it was locked, and they added in these little transitional sounds at maybe 15 points in the movie, but they had to go in and add almost a half a second or a quarter of a second for each transition after they rendered it. So at every time the little transition effect came up, it bumped my audio off. And I had to go find each one and line up the audio by eye and ear after each one.
So basically, timecode didn't work anymore because they inserted time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Good times.
I mean, you always make it work.
You gotta. So I think we covered it all, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so. How about exporting? You're exporting as a video file for them to preview, or you're just exporting audio and they dump that into their Final Cut or Premiere and then preview it?
Yeah, I export audio. If it's just for reference, I'll send them an MP3, and they can line that
as
up.
a 6-channel MP3?
No, stereo mix. All the back and forth reference usually is just stereo.
Okay.
When it comes time for the 5.1, I make them show up.
Okay.
Because I don't know what they're listening on. I don't know if they have the capabilities. I want you to hear what I'm hearing, and then we'll agree on it.
Yeah.
Too many variables at that point.
Cool.
And hopefully people are watching this and they have better ways to do all of this, and I'm all ears.
Yeah, the Reaper blog is a collaboration. We're just trying to find interesting things, either interesting to me at the moment or responses to what people have been asking for. And I think what Ryan's doing is pretty interesting, especially coming from a Pro Tools background, diving headfirst into a 5.1 mix within a week or so.
About that.
And
so far, I'm loving Reaper. It's working out great. I've done a couple music mixes, the 2 5.1 mixes, everything I've thrown at it, like not knowing where anything is. I sat down and spent 2 full days, like 2 12-hour days consecutively, watching videos, learning, applying, trying, mixing, matching, and I got up to speed pretty quick. And now when I'm getting into things like this, every time I just look for something, it might not be in the most intuitive place, but there are 5 more options than I would have thought. And what I need, plus here's even better than what you need. Pro Tools never had that for me. So I'm pretty happy.
Yep. Got to agree with all of that. Cool, man. Great talking to you again.
Always a pleasure.
I hope everyone has enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Check out reaperblog.net for more tutorials, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Oh, yeah.